even watch back. Giving players all the props or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick Podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K, it's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
all in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K, it's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick Podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K, it's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. The Eye Test with Pierre, McGuire, and Jimmy Murphy.
The Stanley Cup winning Colorado Avalanche. And after 22 years, Raymond Mark
The sickest NHL podcast. Brought to you by TCS Customs and Logistics. Moving pieces, delivering peace of mind. It's gonna be sick.
And welcome to another edition of the Eye Test here on the Sick Podcast Network. Jimmy Murphy and Pierre McGuire coming to us live from PBG Paints Arena down in Pittsburgh, where he is at the Mario Lemieux Fantasy Camp. Pierre, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing fantastic, Jimmy. Thanks for asking. I am in the bowels of the PPG Paints Arena here in Pittsburgh. The Zamboni drivers were kind enough to give me their storage room to do this, so it's fun.
Great stuff. So for those that aren't aware, Pierre, out there, just give us a short rundown of what the Mario Lemieux Fantasy Camp is.
Well, it's people from all over the world that come. They have a huge passion, obviously, for hockey. They think the world of the Pittsburgh Penguins organization, and they obviously worship at the altar that is Mario Lemieux, and he's just a special person. This charity, his foundation, has raised almost $40 million for cancer research, which is just an amazing number when you think about it. And probably the largest endeavor that he uses is this hockey event that he puts on every year. And the players come here, and they basically get treated like NHL players. There's masseuses here. There's professional skate sharpening. They stay at a beautiful hotel. Every night's a different restaurant opportunity where we all go as a group. There's security here to make you feel like you're really in the NHL. And sometimes you have to run a hard practice to teach the guys that if they're not playing well, this is what happens in the NHL when you don't play well. Or yesterday when I had a player that overextended one of his shifts right in front of the whole team, I said, "Who taught you that?" And he didn't have an answer. I said, "Because it sure wasn't me." I'll tell you that right now. And all the guys started laughing. It's kind of meant tongue-in-cheek, but it gives the guys a sense for what it's really like. I'm working with Brian Trottier. We're the coach of our team. There's a game going on right now that has Kevin Stevens coaching on one side and Craig Patrick and Ty Domi coaching on the other side.
Wow.
So it's pretty cool. So I just, it's something that never gets old for me, Jimmy. I'm so glad you asked me about it, but Mario's what makes this happen. Mario's an unbelievable human being, and what he does for this community is amazing. It never, ever, ever, like he never shortchanges anybody. It's amazing.
Right. And not to be Sally Downer here, but you were able to watch 2 Penguins games, and obviously it's not looking good for them right now. What's been the atmosphere like, the mood around that team right now?
Well, I can't speak about the mood because I haven't visited any of the players. We stayed in a box with a lot of the players that I coached when I was here. Nobody's really pleased about it. Those are guys that had won before multiple times, the guys I was with yesterday. So their standard is pretty high. Pittsburgh looks like they're going to miss the playoffs for the 3rd straight year. That's really unacceptable. What I will say is Letang works his tail off, Malkin works his tail off, and Crosby works his tail off. They've got huge goaltending issues here. They got huge depth player problems here. They're clearly going into a rebuild. They can say whatever they want. This thing's got a long way to go before it's fixed. And I'm not trying to spin it anyway, Jimmy. That's just the reality of the whole thing.
You brought up Sid there. I know you and I were both lucky enough to cover the 4 Nations, and big thanks, obviously, to McLean's Public House and West End Johnny's, where we did remotes in Montreal and Boston, respectively. But, coming into the weekend, Pierre, you and I were kind of like, Sid's not going to play. I mean, he needs a little break. How surprised and how impressed were you that he was out there on the ice for both those games?
Not surprised knowing it's Sid, but impressed beyond belief. His effort levels. Yeah. He's always trying to drag the guys one step further. He's always trying to push guys to get to the next level. Malkin's the same. Now, he didn't play in the 4 Nations, obviously, but he played his butt off this weekend, Evgeny. I was really proud of him. Now, I feel bad for Sid. I do. I feel bad for because this is not the level he's used to. Mm-hmm. And 3 straight years without playoffs for him has got to be torture. Now, the good news for him is he was part of a Team Canada that won.
Yeah.
And I think the next big event he plays in will be the Olympics. And that very well may be his last big event.
Yeah.
His next year's Olympics in Milan and Cortina. So, again, Sid's a special guy. There's a whole lot of Mario Lemieux and Sidney Crosby. I can tell you that right now.
It's amazing. You saw our team on the other side of the ice yesterday, and credit to their goalie, Igor Shesterkin, who had a stinker on Saturday, an 8-2 loss to the Buffalo Sabres. But you got to see them. That's a team, too, Pierre, that's in a bit of a disarray. They come away with the win there, but I watched that game, and there's a lot of little nuances about what's going on with the Rangers on the ice there. Yeah, they outshot them. Yeah, they won the game, but still they got outshot, and there's things that they're just not doing right now, like basic stuff to the game that I don't know. I really don't know if this team makes the playoffs, Pierre.
Oh, I think it'd be a reach for them to make the playoffs.
Yeah.
They're going to have to go on an unbelievable tear, and I think Chris Drury will have to make another big trade. Mm-hmm. Based on the way they're constructed right now, I have a hard time believing they're going to make the playoffs. We'll see. We'll see. I mean, it's never over till it's over. They're still mathematically very much alive. But what I saw yesterday, they had 15 shots on net, Jimmy, against a Pittsburgh Penguin team that is not going to make the playoffs.
Right. And it's not that great defensively.
No, sir.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's tough stuff. Well, another team that's in for tough sledding right now is the team I follow closely, Pierre. That's the Boston Bruins. And yesterday, their general manager, Don Sweeney, spoke to the media and addressed the current situations, the health situations of Charlie McAvoy and Hampus Lindholm. He announced that Hampus Lindholm is basically gone for the season. And, a fan, I forget the name right now. I apologize. But a fan I saw on Twitter actually pointed out something very interesting, Pierre, not a good sign, that the injury that Hampus Lindholm, the patella injury that he's suffering from right now and has had multiple setbacks with, is actually the same injury that former Bruins defenseman Kevin Millar suffered. And then we saw what happened to him. It was the same thing, setback after setback after setback, where he eventually had to retire at an early age. It doesn't look too good for Hampus Lindholm right now. And then you also factor in, he said Charlie McAvoy is out indefinitely. And for the first time, Don Sweeney basically admitted that it looks like they're going into sell mode. And we don't have the sound, unfortunately, Pierre, but I'm going to read you this quote, and then I want your reaction to it. Don Sweeney was asked about, how do these injuries change your approach now to the trade deadline? He said, look, I think historically we've been pretty aggressive. When our team's been in a position, I think we'll take a much more cautious approach as we approach the deadline now. That being said, if there are opportunities to improve our team now and certainly moving forward, whether that's positional shifts or other teams are trying to identify that we may have a strength at, we will look at all opportunities to improve our team now, but more importantly, moving forward. I mean, this is just stuff that happens during the period of time, and it may plant a seed for the draft and beyond, but there'll be a lot of conversations with people asking what possible moves we can make. We're just going to take a little more cautious approach in terms of as being as aggressive as we have in the past. Pierre, to me, that says he's in sell mode. What does it say to you?
Yeah, I don't know about sell. I think he's exploring every option. I think they're realistic about where their team stands just based on the names that go on the roster every night. There's not enough depth at center. There's not enough depth on the back end, especially with Charlie and Hampus not able to play. People forget Matty Grzelcyk, who got knocked out yesterday by Matt Rempe, by the way. He's not in Boston anymore. He's in Pittsburgh. They've lost a lot on the back end, Jimmy, and you know it. And they just haven't had a lot of internal guys that could step in and fill the void. So, realistically, I don't like where the Bruins are right now. The thing that, and I want to give you credit on this, we were hard on this in the summer, and I know people weren't really happy about it. The Jeremy Swayman stuff wasn't good, Jimmy. Like, it set this team back. They never had cohesion coming out of camp. They never did. And we talked about it a lot on this show. And so that just shows you how important it is to get your business done early. Like, I know you want to have a hard line in negotiation, but when they traded Linus Ullmark, and I know everybody, it doesn't really equate. I think it does. I think Swayman's agent knew. Well, now we got him over a barrel.
Yep.
And we're going to push as hard as we can to squeeze every single dollar out of them. And they did.
Yeah.
And they did.
Yep. And you combine that, Pierre, with the signings that I think, hindsight's 2020, but we here on the show, we said they miscalculated on Elias Lindholm and Akira Zadorov. And like those guys, I think they're very solid NHL players, but they were hoping that Lindholm would come in as a 1C. They thought maybe Zadorov could play in the top 4, and that's just not the case. And, if most scouts knew this, and yet the Bruins threw that money at him, and it just seemed like the roster was misconstructed from the get-go. And I'll give, I don't have the exact quote here, Pierre, but there was a point in that press conference yesterday where Don Sweeney did admit, he said, it's on me and my staff that we didn't organize the depth on this roster enough for situations like we're in right now with the injuries to McAvoy and Lindholm. So I give him credit there, but you look at them right now, Pierre, and there's a lot of people, I hear it on the airwaves today in Boston here. I see it, a lot of Bruins fans saying it's okay. Now they're just going to retool. They'll have a good off season. They'll be back at it next year, just like the Capitals. And I'm like, you know what, Pierre? I'm going to give you credit because I said, hey, do you think they could kind of retool on the fly like the Capitals did? I asked you this about a month and a half ago off the air, and you said, Jimmy, come on. You said, and right away you said, all right, Jimmy, tell me who they have knocking on the door in the minor league system like the Capitals did. Tell me who's coming from college right now that they have it as their property that could enter the lineup right away next year or even this spring. And you're like, nobody. There's nobody there. They are nowhere close to where the Capitals were entering last offseason as they will be entering this offseason.
Hey, the Capitals are going to be getting Ryan Leonard as soon as
I know.
college is done. He's a top 6 forward, instant impact player. You imagine the right side, you got Tom Wilson and Ryan Leonard, 1-2. Thanks for coming.
Yeah.
Good luck. If you're a left defenseman in the league and you play against those guys every other shift, not a lot of fun. So, no, they're different. Nick Dowd, and we talked about him last year. Remember what I kept telling you? Boston should go get Nick Dowd. Boston should go get Nick Dowd. Is probably the best depth forward in the NHL. I watched him play here on Saturday in Pittsburgh. He was outstanding.
Yeah.
So, because he understands his role. He knows he isn't going to play more than 12 minutes a game, maybe 13. He's going to take maybe 12 to 16 faceoffs. He's going to kill all the penalties. He understands his role and he accepts it, and he's really good at it. He's really, really good at it. So, do I see Boston have any players like that? No, I don't. Boston doesn't have any guys like that coming. They just don't.
No, and a great point by you on bringing up a depth player like that is Boston can, with their lineup, they don't have the ability to slot guys into those roles and just let them play their own role. It seems to me throughout this season that a lot of their guys have been forced to play above their role, and because of that, deficiencies happen. You know, they'll cough up the puck here and there. Maybe they force a play that's not there. That's been a main issue for the Bruins throughout this season. So they're going to really have to identify specific slots in that lineup that they need to fill, not just this offseason, I think for the next 2 to 3.
Agreed. I think you're spot on. And I don't think you're being unfair. Let's use Jake Evans, a division opponent, okay, for the Montreal Canadiens. They don't have one player on their roster that plays like Jake Evans does. They don't have one player that plays like Nick Dowd does.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have any guys like that.
No.
You need to have those guys.
Yeah.
You do. Shane, you asked me, why is Ottawa struggling? They've lost 4 straight games. No Josh Norris, no Shane Pinto, and last night, no Brady Tkachuk. So that's just 3 players.
Yeah.
Okay? But one guy, Pinto, is an amazing depth player. He's an elite depth player.
Yeah.
If you don't have those guys in your filtering through your roster at the American League level, you're not going to win. I'm just not going to win.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting. Pierre, anything else just from this weekend back? There are a lot of games, obviously 14 on Sunday, and I think there was something like 7 yesterday. Anything else strike you across the league, trends or any teams that stood out to you? We mentioned the Capitals, but any other teams that you were, wow, I'm impressed.
Toronto, I'm really impressed. Marner was at the Four Nations. Obviously, Nylander was there. Matthews was there. Toronto beat up Carolina pretty good.
Yep.
They beat Chicago, obviously, last night. Not any great shakes, but they start this road trip. It started in Chicago last night. They go into
Boston tomorrow.
Then they go into New York Friday. Then they're one more trip on the road. I forget where it is. They have one more game on the road. They should be able to win all these games. And if they do, they were going to solidify first place in the Atlantic. And that you do not want to finish in the 2-3 hole in the Atlantic.
Yeah.
You want to finish 1 if you can.
Yeah.
And if they finish 1, I think they got a real good shot to win a first-round playoff series. And if they do that, then I think they could go for a long run. The Toronto Maple Leafs, to me, are going to surprise a lot of people. I don't think surprise. I think they're going to do a real good job there at the trade deadline going into it. And if they do it, I think they'll do, Jimmy, they got a chance to go on a big run this spring. Big run.
I'm with you on that. And good point by you on finishing atop the division there. What will help them now is the Florida Panthers missing Matthew Tkachuk for an indefinite amount of time. That's a big loss for the Florida Panthers. And, of course, that's a result of a topic that I'm going to bring up with our next guest in a bit here, Marty Walsh. Some pretty key players coming out of the Four Nations injured. It was an amazing tournament. Nobody's doubting that. But that's something a lot of people, that was the one negative that came out of there is what can we do to prevent those injuries going forward? So we'll talk to him about that. Pierre, I know you're pressed for time. Go coach your game. Enjoy. Have a great time. Please tell my good friends Mark Recchi and Kevin Stevens that I say hello, all right?
Oh, I've already done that, and they both said hi right back at you, and they're looking forward to seeing you soon. Both.
All right. Sounds good. Pierre McGuire, my co-host, joining me here on the Eye Test on the Sick Podcast Network. And as I said, our featured guest on the Eye Test today is going to be joining me right now, and that is the Executive Director of the NHLPA, Marty Walsh, joining us here. Marty, how you doing, my friend?
Good. How are you doing today?
Good. Marty, you got to be happy with the way the Four Nations went. I'm going to, right off the top here, I want to know how you felt going in, what you were hoping to accomplish with that tournament, and how much it exceeded that.
Well, I think going into this job, talking about getting NHL players back in best-on-best competition was something we wanted to do. I heard it from all the players that wanted to be part of this, playing for their country. When we talked about Four Nations, I knew it was going to be great, but it certainly exceeded all expectations. The sold-out houses in Montreal and in Boston, and the TV ratings are off the chart, and the players were all excited playing for their country. You know, when you really think about it, you know, most of the games were close games. Even the Finland-US game was close to the first two periods. You know, a very intense game. You're talking about four first lines. I described this to people. It's like kind of four first lines playing, and it was just up and down action in every single game. So it was really amazing, and it's a great kind of introduction into the Olympics. What we're going to experience in the Olympics, having NHL players back in it next year, and then we're going to follow that up with the World Cup of Hockey in 2028.
So just a lot of people are still kind of wondering about the schedule of international best on best going forward. So let's run it down. Next year, we've got the Olympics.
Yeah, let me just back up, because a lot of people think that this is a replacement of the All-Star game. It's not. Okay. What happened was we were talking about getting the Olympics back on schedule for the NHL players, and then getting the World Cup of Hockey back on schedule, where they schedule for fans and the players. Mm-hmm. So as we're talking about it, we entered into an agreement. It's not signed yet, but we'll work through it on 2026 and 2030 Olympic games. We'll have NHL players playing in those Olympics. 2026 and 2030 Olympic games. Mm-hmm. And then we'll have the World Cup of Hockey 2028. We didn't announce 2032, but our intention is to hopefully keep the World Cup of Hockey moving forward. We wanted to do something in 24-25. We didn't have enough time to pull off a full World Cup of Hockey schedule. So what we decided to do was we came up with the idea of Four Nations to it's kind of like a warm up into the Olympics. And when we announced it, the players were excited about it. But the intensity was really there the other night. So for the fans, this is not a replacement for the All-Star game. What it is, what we want to try and do is every 2 years, you'll have best on best competition in hockey with NHL players, and obviously the World Cup of Hockey and the Olympics will take other than NHL players, because countries can't put a whole NHL team on the ice. But what it'll do, it'll really promote international hockey best on best moving forward here. And I think that's, for the fans, it's exciting. As a kid growing up in Boston, I mean, you know, you and I, you know, I don't really remember 72. You know, in 97, we had the World Cup. There was something in 2016. We had the Olympics. So there was a very inconsistent schedule. And a lot of people still talk about those moments, whatever era you grew up in. I grew up in the 1980 Olympic team. You know, I remember where I was at 13 years old, watching the Russian game, Russia USA. And then the gold medal game was on. Both were actually on the radio before they were on TV. So remember listening on the radio to that game, but also watching it later on. Yep.
I remember it vaguely. I was only just, I think, 5 still at the time, but I remember doing that with my dad, listening on the radio to that. But my moment for my, you know, adolescence was the 96 World Cup, when they went into Montreal and they won that best out of 3 series. Big win there. And ironically, a lot of those guys involved with Team USA for this thing. So let's get it straight. So next year do we have an All-Star game next year?
There'll be an All-Star game next year, and then the
Olympics.
They'll be heading right to the Olympics from the All-Star game. So when the All-Star game break starts, that's the break for the Olympics.
Got you. And then the following year will be just an All-Star game. That's it.
Yeah. Well, the following year we'll have an All-Star game, 27, and then 28 we'll have the World Cup.
Okay, and then every other 2 will start from there.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha for that. Looking at the way the players bought in, I think that was something that, you know, some fans and some media were a little suspicious of. Will they buy in? Will they just turn it up a notch in the middle of an NHL season? Can they do that? There was, as you just already referenced, there was no doubt that they were involved there. How much did that impress you in terms of the players, of how they really took this seriously and really wanted to win this, even though, you know, it was quote unquote exhibition games?
You know, I felt from the very beginning we were going to have this intensity, but it wasn't really fully until I think Connor McDavid was interviewed. And when he said something 2 weeks ago before the tournament started about how excited he was to play, then you know it's real. I mean, you know that the intensity is going to be there. And you heard Nathan McKinnon talk about it. You heard Austin Matthews talk about it. You had heard Brad Marchand talk about it. You had all these different players talking about it. I had a conversation with Jeremy Swayman, and he didn't get into a game, but he's so excited about the tournament. He thought it was the greatest thing. And so I think it's great for hockey, and obviously it's great for these players. And I think, fans that come to watch the game, I mean, the Saturday night game in Montreal where USA played Canada, there were still tickets available in the Garden for the 3 games to be played there. That game ended, USA won it. Those 3 games were gone the next day. That's what this said. And there were people buying tickets in the street. They were buying tickets on, trying to buy tickets and get tickets. And, my phone was blowing up trying to get tickets for the game. And I thought it was going to happen, but, it didn't happen the first few days in Montreal. But, oh, my God, after that Saturday night game, it didn't stop.
How many relatives that you didn't know you had as relatives called you?
Yeah, no, I found out my non-relatives a long time ago. So.
Good stuff. And speaking of that first Saturday night game, USA Canada, obviously the beginning of the game took everybody surprised with the 3 fights, but just the intensity of that game, the atmosphere, then carried over into the national media, not just sports. I mean, people were talking about it on Fox News, talking about it on CNN. The president got involved. I mean, everybody was talking about hockey and then saying the NBA needs to do what the NHL is doing. How did that make you feel as the executive director of the NHLPA when, for years past, the NHL sort of been like the stepsister or stepbrother to the NBA, and now people are saying they need to model the NBA after the NHL.
It's a proud moment. I mean, you obviously get very excited when you see that. When you see, I was talking to Commissioner Bettman about it, and it's great for the sport. I mean, hockey does a lot of great things, the outdoor games, and they do a global series pretty well when they go away. And a lot of sports do copy. They don't say that they're copying us, but hearing it on national TV all weekend and all week, quite honestly, is great to hear, because it shows, the sport that you love and sport that I love and you love and we all love finally getting recognized in different circles. That's important. Now it's about keeping the momentum moving forward, trying to keep that momentum. As a hockey fan, you're already there. Like, you don't have, when you and I are talking, the guys and ladies that are watching this, they're hockey fans. Right. But they also understand the importance of breaking outside of our group and trying to get, new fans and new dynamics here. And that's what we have to do. So it was great to see that. And, again, it's like we just need to continue to follow up. This weekend, we have a game in Ohio. 90,000, I think people are already bought tickets for it. So, I mean, you think about that, Columbus versus the Detroit Red Wings, that's huge. That's another big one for hockey.
You brought up a great thing there. You're talking about getting, drawing in the new fans and everything. One knock that I've had, and some other people have agreed with me sometimes on this, is in years past when the NHL has really put a heavy emphasis on drawing in new fans, but at times I felt like maybe forgot the fans they have, right? Whether it's specific rule changes or the way they have camera angles or what they do with stuff on the broadcast, just little things like that where they kind of forget the roots of where they came from. I felt like this tournament went back to the roots. It went back to what makes hockey great: physicality, speed, excitement, hate, just stuff like that. Did you feel that too with the way it kind of went back to that?
Well, it's a different game, right? You're talking about, you're playing for your country. You're talking about, it's just a different game. It has almost like a Stanley Cup run playoff vibe to it.
Exactly.
And it's hard for players and everyone to have that vibe every single night playing 82 games, or any sport, quite honestly. They turn it up a notch when it comes to the playoffs. And I think that's what happened here. They turned up a notch. And then you had a lot of people tuning in that hadn't tuned in a while, probably that you, obviously the numbers show that. And it kind of brings you back to a time where you might have been following hockey a little differently. Some of the rule changes in hockey, listen, I grew up in Boston and obviously we had the big bad Bruins and we had fights every night and I was at the Garden screaming, yelling about it, but it's also a different game today. It's a lot more finesse. You have players from all over the world playing in there. The styles are different. I think in some cases it's a faster game today. Obviously, I never played it at that level, so I mean, you're better off talking to a pro about that. But certainly when talking to people, it's a bit of a different game today.
Right.
I don't think you want to go see brawls in games every single minute of every game like back in the day we would watch. We loved it. But again, you want to grow the game. And you're right. You don't want to forget the fans you have, because those fans are really important, because they're the ones who have been through everything and stayed with this game, sport of hockey.
All right. So we have amazing cap projections that came out just prior to this tournament in terms of where the NHL is going with the salary cap. The TV ratings are soaring right now. But Marty, not to be Sally Downer right now, but I just want your take. How does the NHL and the NHLPA combat what's going on with the Canadian dollar, and what could happen soon with the economy here in the States as well? Is that a worry right now as you enter this new CBA?
Well, I mean, I think that question was asked the other day of myself and Gary Bettman, and Gary talked about how, everything that we do in the league is based off American dollar. So obviously you want to see the Canadian dollar strong. You don't want the economy to go down. You have to prepare for that day. I mean, as former mayor of Boston, I was always kind of looking at what happens in the case of a downturn in the economy. You have to prepare for that. It's hard you don't know what level. I mean, COVID was a very different dynamic where the world shut down, basically. If we have a downturn in the economy, it's the stock market, it's the housing market, the retail market, whatever market it is, that will add to it. But what we want to do is continue to see how we can continue to grow the sport. The salary cap is not going to be a casualty. At least next year, not going to be a casualty of it. But what we have is the ability to look at the salary cap, project it, that if we see a downturn coming, we can make adjustments to salary cap. Not down. I don't want my players losing any money, and I don't want them paying any more escrow. They've paid enough escrow for the last 10, 12, 13, 14 years that now it's about time that players earn what they make. And what I mean by that is, for the people watching, we have set aside escrow for shortfall. So a player's contract isn't 100% guarantee. It's guaranteed on paper, but this year we started the season with 6% held out of their check in case we had a shortfall. We're able to end that in the end of January, and now moving forward, they'll get their entire check for the rest of the season. So we want to keep an eye on all that. None of us have a crystal ball about what will happen with the economy, but we'd love to see a stronger Canadian dollar, not just for hockey, but for the people in Canada. And we'd love to see, obviously, the economy continue to move forward. And hopefully there's, the powers that be in Washington put things in place that can shorten the effect of potentially a recession or inflation, things like that. It's really complicated, though. It's not easy. I was there for 2 years in Washington, trying to bring inflation down. It did come down, but it's complicated and it's challenging.
Yeah, and I think, the worry is, Marty, obviously, that some of the Canadian teams, in terms, if the salary cap kept going up, right, that some of the Canadian teams who are dealing with the Canadian dollar but have to pay out most of their expenses in U.S. dollar can't keep up, and we're not going to have as much parity as we have. I imagine that's something, like you just said, you guys.
You keep an eye on all that stuff, but the salary cap when it was created to have people at the top of the salary cap and in the middle and the bottom of the salary cap. I think it was never fully thought of that everyone would go to the top of the salary cap. Right. And we want to make sure as we think about the salary cap, as we think about the funding in the league, you want to be able to make sure we're covering our bills and we're not hurting the product in the ice and hurting the game.
In terms of the new CBA that's coming up, how are things going with that? And when do you think in earnest you and Gary and the whole crew will get down to discussions?
Yeah, we're not sure when we're going to start it. I mean, we ended our fall tour a few weeks ago. We're talking to our players. We're putting together a negotiating committee. We're hearing what the feedback from our players are with the recommendations that we have, going through them and seeing, what should we put across? What should we put across? So I'm hopeful in the next few weeks, we should be at least beginning conversations around that. The Four Nations kind of, we had thought originally maybe we'll do some conversations during Four Nations. There was absolutely no time. Yeah. Because during the day there was meetings and challenges came up and then the games were on every night. And then this week it's kind of like everyone's it's like in a hangover mode. Everyone's kind of just like relishing what happened last week and watching the broadcast yesterday. And Saturday, every single broadcast was talking about Four Nations, which is amazing still, to see that. So now it's we have the outdoor game next weekend, and then we can start focusing on what we need to focus on.
I was just saying to my co before I let you go, I was just saying, amazing to see guys like Sidney Crosby right back out there again. How much did that impress you just to see these guys? I mean, they're animals.
I watched Sid's game, both of them actually, and flying around the ice like
it's unreal.
Not missing a beat. And Connor McDavid and Brett Marchand the other day here in the Garden. But when you think about that, these players, they're intense anyway. They don't get to the level of where they are. Their game never gets to that level if they're not intense people. So they're competitive, they're intense. They want to go out, they want to win every faceoff, win every shift, win every game. And it's really it's great for, as a fan, thinking about that the players on the ice want to win every single faceoff, and that's what you want in your sport. You don't want this kind of lag period where for half the game they're just kind of skating around. That doesn't happen in hockey.
No, for sure. Listen, Marty, we appreciate you taking the time. You're doing a wonderful job. It's good to have a Boston guy there again, helping out the NHLPA. And maybe I'll see you around Dorchester for St. Patrick's Day, all right?
Yeah, hopefully we'll see you soon. Love you.
All right, have a good one. That's NHLPA Executive Director Marty Walsh joining me here on the Eye Test on the Sick Podcast Network. If you're just tuning in now or just for that interview, Pierre McGuire joined us a little early. He had to get off because he is now actually on the bench coaching at the Mario Lemieux Fantasy Camp in Pittsburgh. Amazing thing that Mario Lemieux does. People pay upwards of $2,000 to go down there, and they get drafted onto teams. It's all for charity, and they play like a round-robin tournament, and they do all sorts of functions around it. The Penguins had 2 home games there this weekend as well. So Pierre's down there with the likes of Kevin Stevens, Mario Lemieux, Mark Recchi, tons of Pens alumni working there. So he has to deal with that. But that doesn't mean that we've forgotten you guys, because we've got time now for your questions as I see them lining up there for our Q&A. Before we get into that, let me tell you right now about our 2 sponsors. Let's start with TCS Customs and Logistics. Unlock the full potential of your shipping operation with TCS Customs and Logistics. From around the corner to around the world, flatbeds to air freight, customs clearance to drawback consulting, TCS is a one-stop shop for all things transport, moving pieces, and delivering a peace of mind. For no obligation customs or freight quote, contact sickpodcast@shiptcs.com. Again, that is sickpodcast@shiptcs.com. And of course, our other sponsor, Betway. You want to go right now, go all the way with Betway. And again, I don't know, they're still doing this. They're still letting you go over there and lose money. And yet you can go over right now and get a free bet up to $200, even if your first bet loses, as a new customer. Again, that's only available for new customers. So to sign up right now, you can sign up with the QR code right in front of you, or go to the details section at the website and sign up there. The offer is not available in Ontario right now. Terms and conditions apply. You must be 18 plus, and please play responsibly. There were some great games over the weekend. The over was the bet, I guess. It was something out of, so we had 21 games over the weekend. I saw something, there's about 13 out of 21 went over. So I guess that was the bet this weekend. I'm going to mix a little over in here right now. So let's go right to our sick pick of the night.
It's time for Sick Picks. Brought to you by Betway.
All right, I'm going to go right out west. They've got an early game at 7:40. San Jose Sharks at Winnipeg Jets. I'm not going to touch that right now, even though I think that will be a better game than some expect. The Jets are heavy favorites on the money line, -500. You know what? I will touch it. I will give you a little. I'm going to credit my good friend Ian Cameron from the Ice Guys podcast. If you ever want great hockey handicapping advice, I highly suggest you check that podcast out with Alex Smith and Ian Cameron. And Ian has a bet, the system bet that has been working pretty well. I think he was something at like 76% before the Four Nations, where if you have an underdog that is 300 or more, so that means that the favorite is -300 or more. So that would be the case in this Jets Sharks game, where they are -500 on the money line. You're getting no value there with the Jets, and it's hard. If you don't think the Sharks are going to win, that's a hard one to do. Look at the first period and bet the Sharks to score in the first period. You can get that right now at +100. Sharks to score in the first period. That's good value right there. Maybe they sneak one by. Maybe the Jets overlook them a bit because they're just such superior favorites in this. But my focus is on the late game at 10:40. You've got the Vegas Golden Knights going into LA. By the way, great thing, LA, I think they call it LA Strong. They did a great event, a scrimmage with some celebrities out there in LA yesterday to help out all those who suffered from the fires last month. So great job by the Kings and the LA community there and all the celebrities around the LA Kings. So the Golden Knights are in LA to play the Kings. The Kings are minus 105 favorites. Vegas Golden Knights are minus 115, slight underdogs. Or actually, Vegas is the favorite. If you bet them on the puck line, you get them at plus 225. I'm going to look at the Kings to win, and I also like the over. So give me a little short parlay there, a 2-item parlay. The Kings minus 105 and the over 5.5 is my sick pick of the night. And remember, always go to Betway to make your bets. Let's get into that Q&A. What do we got? All right, FFFF. Hello, gents. Does anyone know in the upcoming Olympics if the ice will be, I wish I had seen this before, FFF, will be 85 feet wide, 92 or 100? This will determine what type of roster Canada will put together. From what I've heard, and I heard some pretty high up people talking about this in Montreal when I was up there for the Four Nations, it's going to be a hybrid. This is what they use in the Finnish Elite League, I believe. Over in Europe, they're going to have a hybrid rink. So that's what I know. I don't have a confirmation on that. I'll tell you what, FFF, I will look into that overnight. Get back to me tomorrow on that. I'll have an answer for sure on you, for you on that. All right, next question. Ron LaRue. Did Zegras have the right mentors or enough mentors? That was a dirty hit on Rasmussen, and his decisions sometimes don't seem mature. Ron, that's a great question. I completely agree with you. I haven't seen if anything's come out. Actually, we'll check now as I'm talking to you right now. He did have a hearing today. I think it was supposed to take place at about 3:30. So no result yet on that hearing for the interference on the Red Wings Rasmussen. I agree with you. It's a dirty hit. I completely agree with you that there seems to have been a lack of mentorship along the way. I know just from speaking to the Anaheim Ducks, I know Greg Cronin very well, as I've told you guys here on the show, the head coach of the Ducks. I actually saw Greg Cronin the other day. Big thanks to him and the Ducks for leaving 2 passes for my daughter Maddie and me. We were able to take in the game day skate. It was actually Maddie's first time ever in TD Garden. She's 13 years old. We were down on the bench, hanging out, meeting some players, had a good chat with Greg and also assistant coach Tim Army. And in talking to Crow the other day, he actually said he had been impressed with Zegras' play as of late and the way he's been exuding himself in practice, like really putting a work ethic, was really improving there. So I'm sure he wasn't happy with that hit, but he has been happy as of late. But I agree with you. There needed to be a little more mentorship there for Zegras. Hopefully he can find it with Cronin and the coaching staff on the Ducks. All right, next question. Ron again. With Heineman back in the lineup for the Habs, can we now say they are sellers? Just definitely not enough depth on the team for injury voids. Please, let's keep the farm team stocked with talent. Ron, I think they had pretty much been understood. They were leaning towards being sellers heading into the Four Nations break. I think you could still classify them, though, as hybrid sellers. Kind of like what Pierre and I were discussing earlier about the Bruins. I think they're going to look to maybe make some body-for-body trades, maybe get a little younger, or maybe fill certain roles in their lineup that they feel they don't have right now that can be filled. So it's not going to just be like selling players for picks or prospects. I think you could see some player-for-player trades when it comes to the Montreal Canadiens. All right, next question. What do we got? Joe, how can we tweak a trade between Habs and Toronto, sending them what they need? Evans, Armia, Matheson, and get Cowan, Minton, Domi, and a pick. Joe, I don't blame you for shooting for the sky there. It's not going to happen. The Maple Leafs are not trading Cowan and Minton. If you want Domi back, fine, but that's not happening. All right, next question. Ron again. Some people have Wolf leading as the Calder Trophy. He's obviously a good goalie. Does he have weaknesses? For example, Dobis was figured out in a week. Yeah, but Ron, and I love your question, but Dobis wasn't on the level of Wolf coming in terms of prospect and how much they were expecting out of him. So I wouldn't make that comparison, but I know what you're saying. Yeah, they figured him out pretty fast. I remember texting Pierre his 3rd game in and saying, watch how much teams are targeting him in front and bumping him and getting him off his game. I think that was a weakness they identified right away. As for Wolf, I haven't watched him enough to really give you a detailed assessment of what weaknesses he may have. But from what I've watched, he seems pretty damn poised for me. he seems to be able, despite being much shorter than Dobis, to be able to handle guys bumping him in net and traffic in front of him. He finds ways to see the puck and to get around there and not let that distract him. I definitely think he's a leader of the Calder. I think Celebrini gets it. I think it's between him, Celebrini, and Lane Hudson right now. All right, next question. Postnet on 130. A higher salary cap is going to increase ticket prices and affect gate and season attendance, along with the Canadian-US dollar exchange. How do you keep costs down? Entertainment dollar goes only so far. Completely agree with you, posting it on 130. And look, I'm sure, he's never told me this, but I think that Marty Walsh, who we just had on, or Gary Bettman, Bill Daly, who we had on in Montreal at McLean's Public House during the Four Nations, would all agree that concession stand prices, ticket prices need to go down, but they can't tell the owners that. And I think it's on the owners right now. It's on the NHL team owners to look in the mirror and face reality that you can't keep going with what you're charging people to get through the door and what you charge them once they're through that door right now. Because even Marty Walsh acknowledged there that they've got all sorts of contingency plans going on right now because the economy, both in Canada and the United States, are giant question marks. And people can say all they want, that Trump's going to fix things right now, and other people can say he's not fixing things. Nobody knows. All we know is that nothing is for certain right now. There are gigantic question marks when it comes to the economies in not just Canada, but in the United States and all over the world right now. So that's something the owners have to look at and say, hey, if we want people to keep paying to come to these games and being able to sit there with their son or their daughter or their whole family and be able to buy some dogs and sodas, what have you, we need to eventually lower these prices. They're going to laugh at me right now, but I'm with you guys. They need to lower them. All right, next question. Alex Evanowski, how weird is it that the Bruins are probably selling this year? Feels like the end of an era. At some point, maybe you consider Pasta or Charlie next year. Alex, I don't think it's weird. I've been thinking this was coming for a while. I think that the Bruins were a little weird in the way they approached last offseason when they went out and gave that money to Elias Lindholm and Zadorov. I don't know what they were looking at, where they thought they were going to be legit contenders. It's time to pay. Like, you've gone after it. You've been a contender for so long. It can only last, and everything goes in cycles. And I think that they were lucky their cycle went that long. And I think the biggest mistake is that Don Sweeney didn't address the center position like 2 years before Bergeron and Krejci retired. They should have looked at that and been ahead of it, and they never got ahead of that. And I don't know if he thought he was going to keep persuading Bergeron and Krejci to come back year after year and not retire, but he should have been more prepared for that. And I think when it goes down, whether it's now, it could be this offseason when he loses his job, or eventually whenever that happens, that could be his biggest regret and the biggest knock on his tenure as Boston Bruins GM, is that he didn't secure the center position while he still had Bergeron and Krejci in the lineup. As for Pasta and McAvoy, I don't see them getting dealt. They both have strict no movement clauses that are now in effect. It's one guy, though, that doesn't have a no movement clause until July 1st. And I don't think he's going to get dealt. But if you really wanted to get a ton back and reshape things and accelerate the process, do you move Jeremy Swayman? I know that sounds like an insane question right now, but he's got no protection right now. And out of all your highest rated tradable assets, he's the one that I think you could get the most back for right now without having to ask him to waive anything. So who knows? We'll see. All right, next question. Randy Workman, do you see Marchand traded? Yes. They are both saying they're working towards a contract extension. I believe them, but I also think that Marchand got a newfound appreciation of what it's like to play meaningful hockey this late into the season. I think he really enjoyed playing with his Nova Scotia buddies, Sidney Crosby and Nathan McKinnon. Now, I don't think he wants to go to Pittsburgh, but I know for a fact that Colorado has poked around on him, and I wouldn't be surprised if Nathan McKinnon was trying to recruit him there. I do think there's a very solid chance that Brad Marchand gets traded. We'll see. Maybe we wake up tomorrow and he's signed an extension. Who knows? But I don't think it's as out of the question as they were maybe trying to paint yesterday. There was some key words there. I think actually we might have the sound on Marchand. Are we able to go to that right now, Shane, where Don Sweeney was talking about Marchand?
Historically, we've been pretty aggressive. When our team's been in a position, I think we'll take a much more cautious approach as we approach the deadline. That being said, if there are opportunities to improve our team now and certainly moving forward, whether that's positional shifts or other teams are trying to identify that we may have a strength at, we will look at all opportunities to improve our team now, but more importantly, moving forward.
Meaning trading away players and trading in players potentially?
Yeah. I mean, it's just stuff that happens during this period of time, and it may plant a seed for the draft and beyond. But there'll be a lot of conversations with people asking, what possible moves we can make. We're just going to take a little more cautious approach in terms of as being aggressive as we have been in the past.
Brad has said that he'd like to be a Bruin for life. Do you want that?
That's always been my ultimate goal. We've been in negotiations with Brad and communicating with him throughout the year. We'll have to have a conversation now that Four Nations is over and sit down with Brad and his representatives and have a clearer path in the next 2 weeks as to what his final outcome will be.
Okay, key thing at the end there. We have to have a discussion as to what his final outcome will be. He did not say, hands down, his final outcome is he's signing here or he retires. He left the door open there. And so that's why I think there's still a strong chance that Brad Marchand gets traded. All right, next question. Postnet on 130. Sam Bennett, UFA after the season. Lots of teams interested. How he plays a 200-foot game. He has a lot of miles on him. Is he worth the gamble to sign him long-term if available? Contender, yes. Rebuilding, question mark. I think if I'm a GM, I'm not signing him past 3 years. But that's not going to happen because some GM out there is going to give him 5, maybe even 7. With, as we discussed with Marty, the projections of the cap going up and up and up, even though it's not a certainty, I think some GMs are going to get carried away with those projections and make some moves that they regret. I think Sam Bennett's a great player. I think in the immediate term of his contract, like the first year or 2, maybe even 3, he can still be very effective. But I think later on, he's going to become an anchor to your salary cap. All right, next question. Entertap. Jimmy, do you see Sweeney and Neely's job at risk given how the Swayman situation was handled and the direction the team is heading in? Entertap, great question. I see Sweeney's job definitely at risk right now. I think it's a lot could be determined how he handles the NHL trade deadline, and then they decide whether they let him handle free agency in the draft. I think Cam Neely's safe. All right, next question. Entertap again. Do you see any validity in the rumor that the Leafs will trade Marner for Rantanen? I heard somebody propose that to Elliot Friedman, and then I heard our good friend Mitch Melnick talking about it on TSN 690. I think right now it's all banter. But I mean, hey, they're both UFA for UFA. I think Mitch Marner fits in a lot better with the analytics heavy hockey ops department in Carolina as opposed to Rantanen. So I could see them saying, hey, maybe, going long-term past now, this guy is the guy that's going to fit in better for us. And he might want to sign here. Who knows? I think Mitch Marner wouldn't mind getting out of a hockey mecca like Toronto and not having that constant pressure of the media and the fans there. Not that Carolina fans aren't rabid and they have a very underrated hockey base, but in terms of media, you got maybe 3 or 4 local reporters there that are there every day. That's it, if you're lucky. So I don't think he'd mind that escape, so to speak. We'll see what happens. I do think that Rantanen gets moved, though. I don't know about Marner. I think Toronto, like Pierre said earlier before he got off the show here today, I think Toronto's poised to make a run, and they might just say, you know what? If worst comes to worst, if we can get to the conference final beyond, then we bite it and we lose him for free, or we trade the rights to him for a pick or 2 or a prospect before the draft or something, or before free agency like that when it comes to Marner. But I do think Rantanen gets moved. Looks like that's it for our questions. Thanks, everyone. Weird to be back here in the home studio after all the traveling back and forth to Montreal and Boston. Again, I want to thank McLean's Public House up in Montreal, 1420 Peel Street. If you're ever in Montreal or you live there, highly suggest going there. Tell Stu Ashton or the staff that you know me and you know Pierre, they'll treat you well. Amazing food, amazing atmosphere, great pour on the Guinness. Not that I would know, I can't drink it anymore, but Pierre seemed pretty happy with it. Great location. And then, of course, West End Johnny's in Boston, 138 Portland Street, right up the street from TD Garden. Thanks to Johnny Caron. Thanks to his good friend Trevor that helped us out, organizing and making that happen. Just an amazing staff there as well. Great location. The food is delicious. Really good drink options there. So it was a great time there. And also I want to thank our staff back at the studio in Montreal who had to do a lot behind the scenes to make these remotes work, specifically in yellow, coming down one day to make sure the sound was working at McLean's Public House. Really, just thanks to everyone out there. It was a great time. Pierre and I really enjoyed it. We met a lot of good fans and really enjoyed like putting the faces to the names we see here in the chat room. So really excited about that. We got some more remotes coming. We're trying to work on something right now for the ECAC playoffs at Lake Placid in the third weekend of March. We've got some other ideas we're working on. So we will keep you posted on that. Big thanks to Marty Walsh, the NHLPA executive director, former mayor of Boston. He actually knows a lot of the same people my dad knew. He's been great to me, and I'm really getting to know him over the last year or so has been fun. So thanks to him, and thanks to Jonathan Weatherden for arranging that interview for us here on the Eye Test. And thanks to you in the Q&A section. Great questions as always. Thanks to TCS Customs Logistics and Betway. We appreciate your support. This is before I go, want to tell you too, for those out there, we've got a great guest lineup already worked up for this week. Tomorrow on the Eye Test, we will be talking Vancouver Canucks, and I can't wait to talk about Elias Pettersson's comments about the media in Vancouver yesterday. I'm sorry, man. This kid's got to change his attitude. It's ridiculous. So we're going to get into that with longtime radio host in Vancouver, Rick Dhaliwal. He's been on here before. Love having him on. He'll be joining us tomorrow on the Eye Test, and then we're going to talk some Edmonton Oilers on Wednesday with longtime play-by-play man Jack Michaels. They need to figure out their defense and goaltending soon, so we'll talk to Jack about that with the trade deadline coming up on March 7th. And then we're going to be recording on Thursday morning. Our on-campus Friday interview will be with longtime and soon-to-be retired head coach, legendary head coach for Army hockey, Brian Riley. Really looking forward to that. Congratulations to him on a great career. He just coached his last regular season game. So we'll get to talk to him, record that, and that will air Friday. And then we're working on a guest for Thursday afternoon. We'll keep you posted for that. But until tomorrow, when we bring on Rick Dhaliwal, I am Jimmy Murphy. This has been another edition of the Eye Test here on the Sick Podcast Network.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Eye Test with Pierre McGuire and Jimmy Murphy on YouTube, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.